sweep. I just got some bad news that Blake Bortles didn't get re-signed. I'm Zach Bruner, Luke Reimer, Trevor Lander here.
I'm not Zach Bruner this week.
No, not this week. Let's talk about last week.
I'm sorry, guys. We let him back.
Yeah, let's talk about last week. You guys were talking your shit as if I wasn't listening live the entire time.
No, that's exactly why we did talk it. That's exactly why.
The guy sitting in the middle of us was out running his mouth. Well, me and Janet were trying to be kind to you, Zach.
Hey, look.
When's
the best time to talk shit? When the other one's down on the ground incapacitated. That's the best time, when they can't do anything about it.
Fair enough. I'll let it slide this time.
Also, in my defense, you said I could start saying like you're full of shit at my 1-year anniversary, which I'm pretty sure was last week. So
true.
I'm pulling out the big card.
That's true. Yeah, you can say I'm full of shit whenever you want. I don't care. It's almost always true. I say stuff because I think it's funny, usually, not because I actually believe it. Let's start with this preseason game, though, because this first note is something I do believe. Nijman was playing left tackle. That dude doesn't fucking belong on a football field ever again. He does not deserve to play football at any level ever again.
They should just get rid of blocking sleds and use him.
Yeah, fair. Put him on skis and just let him go.
Honestly, my dad, I didn't realize like it started. My dad, I just hear a ton of expletives. And he's like, maybe Love could throw something deep, which we'll talk about him later. If he could catch a block, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I see this dude look like one of the mannequins in Dick's Sporting Goods, except he looks less good. And I said, that makes sense.
It is. Like, you can't keep him because he's not a developmental guy. And if he ever has to step foot on the field because of an injury, you're done. Like, he should have been one of this week's cuts. There's no excuse for it.
He's like that quote that they had in the Colts organization about why they never had a backup quarterback, because if Peyton Manning went down, they're screwed anyways. That's what it is with him. That's who he is.
That's a great quote.
It's true. It is true. On the contrary, if Aaron Rodgers went down, the Packers usually keep 2 guys behind them for no fucking reason. So that's good too.
And don't play one of them that they drafted.
Nah, yeah. We probably don't even have one active on game day. That's good too.
He's on the sideline doing quantum leap with their playbook.
And again, back to why I'm upset. Why not have Blake Bortles there ready opening beers for everybody? Like, at least have some utility in your backup quarterback. Not
family night. It's a time to drink and be merry.
Could you imagine like the beer snake they could have had at family night?
Mm-hmm.
Like
for every time Aaron Rodgers hits it in the bucket from 45 yards,
free beer.
Bortles shotguns a beer.
Yeah. This is how you make the Packers great again. That they need it. We can't get over the hump. We need a little good juju here, not Juju Smith-Schuster, just some people, like, you get it. It makes no sense. But we got who is it? Duliagata or whatever? Is that his name?
Duliagala. That's what I think his name is.
Great. Can't wait. So excited. Okay, back to this preseason game. This nightmare. By the way, okay, so the biggest takeaway I'll say, or the biggest takeaway from that everyone's talking about, is Jordan Love. What should have been the biggest takeaway for this game is how bad this offensive line was, because it was unbelievably terrible. Let's talk about Josh Myers, rookie center. He had some good moments. He had a lot of bad moments. He is too quick up to backer. People are excited that he laid out the linebacker. However, they forget that he didn't block the defensive lineman who made the tackle. Like, that's the kind of fucking analysis. I'm pissed off right now. I'm really upset about Blake Bortles not coming back. But that's what happens with Josh Myers. Like, that's what he was doing the entire time in college that I talked about when he got drafted. And, oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers shit-talked him today saying he had a terrible practice because he didn't know how to read the Jets defense. This is everything we've talked about. Like, he's just not there mentally. He's not ready to be the week 1 starter, but he's going to be the week 1 starter. And everyone thinks, oh, he won the job. But much like Joe Barry, who didn't win the job, is just someone being given something that he doesn't deserve. And boy, I hope who's a Who's the pass rusher for the Saints? I can't even freaking remember his name right
Cam
now.
Jordan.
Cam Jordan. Hopefully he doesn't do an inside stunt right up the middle and take out Aaron Rodgers' knees week 1, because that's what's probably what they're going to try to do.
The kind of going off the offensive line, at the third quarter at one point the Packers had -2 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Also, like I get we have our third stringers out there, but we were playing the third stringers from the Texans.
Exactly.
Which is arguably like if the NFL had a single A team, that's basically what they'd be. And they kind of got ran, kind of, and we had a starter out there. Josh Myers is what happens when like the owner hires his son to work as like the manager, and they don't know what the hell they're doing, so they're just in the back smoking. That is who Josh Myers is.
It's like when Michael Scott hired his nephew.
That's true.
Yeah.
If Aaron Rodgers were to spank him on the field, that would be electric. See what happens when Janet's gone? We're 6 minutes in.
Yeah. You're right, though. You're right. And this was kind of my point the entire time I was watching the Texans. I get it's backups on backups. You can't take much away from the Packers game, from anybody's game. But our backups were playing the Texans' backups, and the Texans' starters don't deserve to be in the NFL. Like, that's the kind of shit we're dealing with here. And I will say this. There is a sort of unspoken preseason thing that you usually don't run many blitzes. You don't run a ton of stunts. Like, you know the kind of looks you're going to get. And Lovie Smith didn't give 2 fucks. He did absolutely everything he wanted, and it made the Packers look bad. However, we should have adjusted something at some point. So that's
Lovie
that.
Smith looks like Santa Claus.
The
He
Packers
looks like
were the
trash.
The Packers were the manifestation of the meme. Oh no. Anyways, like that's how it was on offense. Like, oh no, they're blitzing. All right, that's fine.
Well, on defense too, they didn't even seem concerned with stopping the run in the second half. I know most people didn't watch it, but like there was usually you have someone to contain, and they didn't even have the second person inside. They just ran outside the entire time. Couple more things on this offensive line because it didn't get much better. I will say I thought John Runyon looked pretty good for the most part. He did get his put on his ass on a stretch left. I think he plays a little off balance, but I think on like run plays where he can go straight ahead, I think he has power and I think he's pretty good. I just don't think he has a ton of mobility, and it kind of is what it is. And then Lucas Patrick also had a really bad game. Like he got beat on an inside stunt the entire time. And he, you know, I've been saying he needs to be that guard spot so there's some experience on the inside interior when Elton Jenkins is on the left tackle. But, I mean, experience doesn't mean much when you're not playing well. And it just wasn't great.
I question how they prepared for this game. Like, did they just have pizza parties like 2 out of every 5 days? Because, like, I get, like, your line isn't going to be great. But like you said, like, Lucas Patrick has been solid. And he looked like he hasn't played or even touched a football since Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. So what are we doing? Because we know he's getting the reps, and he could take a person out of the crowd at practices open to the public, and they'd probably be as good as the Texans' third stringer. So I don't understand what's going on here.
There were a couple times he got beat, and I feel like it was a lack of communication. Like I think the tackle probably should have slid too. But you know what my biggest takeaway from this offensive line was? It looked like we had a bunch of guys playing out of position. No shit. Like that's what happens when you draft guards to play tackle and tackles to play guard. We got versatility, but we don't have anyone who knows how to play their position. And it's fun to watch. It's just really good. I'm glad we did this.
Zach, do you have the soundboard on?
No.
Because if so, I'd like you to clip. Oh no, we suck again from like that whatever movie that was. Like that's what I kind of look like. Like it was pathetic. I mean, we'll go on the rest of it too, and obviously the offensive line was to blame for some of the other stuff. Mm-hmm. It was not all. It was some of the stuff to blame. It wasn't all, but like, come on. Like I get it's first preseason, but somehow the players looked more apathetic than the fans who paid like $2 to get in.
Yeah. Yeah. Offensive line for sure was the biggest weakness of the entire game. And it was talked about for all of 5 seconds. It needs to be talked about more. They were really, really bad. I believe they will get better. Obviously, we had a lot of people out. I understand that. Dennis Kelly looked unbelievably bad for someone who started 16 games last year, and that just didn't make sense to me. I'm not 100% sure what that was. Again, he started 2 games against this Texans team, against the starters of this Texans team. I don't get it at all. But anyway, whatever. Let's talk about Jordan Love since everybody else is. And I was watching this game in Ohio in a hotel room, and I saw everyone losing their mind about Jordan Love. And what's your guys' thoughts on Jordan Love's performance? Let's start with that.
I'd like to quote the great Luke Reimer. I'll get to it. Jordan Love threw screen passes that middle schoolers should probably be able to fucking make. Like, are we serious? His touchdown, 22 yards on a screen pass where he had 5-foot radius 2 yards away. Like, what are we even talking about here? Like, he didn't go deep. When he did, it was into double coverage. His throws over the middle, Funchess made a great play. Yeah, because the throw was shit. Like, what are we even talking about here? He can't do that. We've talked about LaFleur has to work on his footwork. He fumbled when he hit his own damn body. And he hurt himself somehow. Like, what are we? He threw a cool slant. Awesome. As Luke once said, what the hell are we doing here at this point? Like, what are we even doing here? Because it makes no sense why we're hyping up a dude who plays slants. It wasn't terrible. I won't hate on him for it, right? First start. Mm-hmm. You're acting like he's the second coming of Jesus Christ because he could throw a slant. Guess what? A lot of people can throw slants in the NFL.
I think that this was a showing of all the people who said, look how we drafted Aaron Rodgers when we had Brett Favre. Look how we drafted Jordan Love when we had Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is much better than Jordan Love is now. When Aaron Rodgers came into the league, Brett Favre was much worse than Aaron Rodgers was now when drafted the replacement. Maybe it was my low expectations, but Jordan Love, he played all right in my eyes. You know, he made the passes he had to make. He had that one nice one down the seam to Sternberger, put it right on him. It was nice. It seems like from the practice I've been to and the preseason game, he is developing a little bit of a chemistry with Devin Funchess. I don't know if that's because they both didn't play last year and that's more time talk on the sidelines or whatever. But it looks like he was looking to Devin Funchess a lot, which I wouldn't say is a terrible thing as Jordan Love still develops because that's a big man to throw a ball to. But the mobility was not as great as, Jordan Love, in my mind, was not as great as what people thought that he could do. There's a lot of times where he wasn't standing up in the pocket. He wasn't rolling out of pressure. He wasn't doing the simple things that a quarterback does. And when John Kuhn interviewed Aaron Rodgers during the game, I don't know if you guys saw that, Aaron Rodgers said that the one thing he needs to work on is footwork. And that's with all quarterbacks. But if you want to develop into a starting quarterback, you can't be sitting in the pocket trying to make plays happen while the whole pocket's collapsing on you. You have to know your awareness. You have to take more than what the defense gives you with these little screen passes and checkdowns. You need to be the playmaker, not have the plays made for you.
That's a good point that I haven't thought about a ton, like his mobility. One of the big reasons why the Packers took him and why they thought he was the guy was because of that mobility, because it would work super well with the play action, just stretching out the defensive line, doing stuff like that. I haven't seen that even a tiny bit. Like he's a statue in the pocket. He might as well be Brock Osweiler. It doesn't really matter. He throws like him too. I don't know. I haven't seen that. And I'll start positive. I thought he did a good job with his eyes. And I thought he made good reads for the most part. I think he had a couple bad decisions. Like you said, the double coverage to Devin Funchess down the field it should have been an interception if he wasn't playing the Texans, essentially, anybody else. But for the most part, he did pretty good with that. I think, aside from screens, every single pass was off target. Every single one. The Jay Sternberger one, Jay Sternberger had to slow up and then reach behind him. The slant to Devin Funches was low and out in front of him, so he had to one-hand it and fall down, which, by the way, Funches falls down after every catch because he cannot run anymore. And we'll talk about him getting hurt today in practice in a second. But, yeah, like, Love did some good stuff with the mental. He was making good reads. I think he knows the offense now. But as we've said before, he's an inaccurate quarterback. I'm not sure if he can become accurate. And it sucks for him because he's going to be following probably the most accurate quarterback in NFL history. So it's just going to look that much worse. But he was off target on every throw. And once you start throwing past 5 yards, that becomes greater and greater error there. And some of the inaccuracy was because he wouldn't step into a throw for no reason. And that comes down to footwork. But there was ones that he stepped into, and it was just off. And that's what's concerning to me. Players still caught it. That's great, but that's not going to be the case going forward.
The one thing that there's one play that I loved and hated at the same time. The one thing that I loved about it, he had to get out of the pocket, and he went through multiple progressions pretty fast. And you like to see that he has his options open. The bad thing about it was he had about 20 yards of running room right in front of him, and he passed it to his running back. So I love that he's going through the progressions, but it's almost like he's overthinking things again. And that's also a problem when you add in the footwork. So I don't think again, I don't hate on him, and I'm not going to say he had a horrible game, but when you bring up the footwork, the inaccuracy, and just the not really knowing what to do in certain situations, it's concerning and it's annoying when people act like he did super well. And I don't think that's what Luke is doing either, but certain people out there acted like, hey, he did better than Aaron Rodgers. Did he though? Like, come on.
Yeah, just my point is he took what the defense gave him. He made his reads, he made his correct reads. He just didn't make plays, and which is fine as a game managing quarterback. It just, you're not going to get any more better by in a preseason game against the third string Texans players by checking down on every single play.
Mm-hmm. And obviously his day ended. He was stripped because he wouldn't step up into the pocket. He was stripped, came forward with an empty hand. It looked like it was all ball. I guess he did come forward with an empty palm. And supposedly he has a shoulder injury. I will say he didn't grimace. He didn't do anything. He was pumping his arms nice and hard on the way back to the sideline. He came back in, handed the ball off 3 times. I'm not saying he didn't get hurt. I am saying I have questions because I don't think he's hurt. Just looking at what happened and what's coming up this week with a joint practice, I don't think he's hurt. And there hasn't been any acknowledgement of what his injury is. He has a shoulder injury. It could be severe. It could not be. He could practice. He might not. He could play this week. He also could not. We're not going to sign the best quarterback available in Blake Bortles. We'll sign somebody else who sucks. I don't think he's hurt. I just don't think he's hurt. And then going forward with that, Kurt Benkert destroyed the Texans defense. Then there's an issue with the mesh point. There's a fumble. And then they ran the ball every time. Are we protecting Jordan Love? Because it seems like we're protecting Jordan Love. We don't want Benkert to outperform him. We don't want to put him in front of the Jets on a joint practice and expose him there. We don't want to put him on the field for the second preseason game and expose him there. We need to take steps forward. We need to make sure his footwork's better for the next time we see him. We don't want to destroy his confidence. That's what I think is going on, and this is full speculation. This is not me knowing anything. That's just my thoughts.
It all makes sense to me.
It has always felt like up to this point, and the injury feels like, again, another contingency plan. Talked about it all the time. about how they're going to double down every single time. That's what they're doing here. Ben Kurt is not going to make it on this team, but if we know one thing about the Packers, um, he'll be a great practice squad player, like granted, completely different scenario, but like a Matt Hasselbeck or a Kurt Warner that just goes somewhere else. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer, but he'll get an opportunity elsewhere if we don't give it to him. And he did look good. He can't deny that.
I'm not convinced that he won't make the team, and that scares me.
I just meant like
as the third
time.
quarterback,
like playing time. He won't see any time.
True.
Hopefully, Jesus, if he plays, it's not good.
Yeah, this season doesn't matter anyway. I'm afraid the Packers keep him as the third quarterback. I'm really nervous about it because there's so many places we need to clearly keep players. Our depth was exposed against the Houston Texans of all people. I don't know.
It's funny. This is a team that's all in, and not only do they not sign any free agents really outside of Devondre Campbell, great signing, but nobody else. They get worse. They draft horribly. Now they're going to keep probably, like you said, if they do, 3 quarterbacks, which means they lose a spot for a guy that they need to run it back, which again brings up the question, what are we doing? Because this team is not going to win the Super Bowl. None of this is like, at this point, they're just not. There's no way. There is no way this team's winning the Super Bowl. I get Kurt Benkert's good, but why are we keeping 3 quarterbacks if we're trying to win the Super Bowl? It just doesn't add up.
There's also a play that in the preseason game that we didn't talk about. It was the play where the whole offensive line and the running back went to the left. Jordan Love opened to the right and then rolled out to the right. Where I think Kevin Harlan was on the call and he said, "Oh, there must have been miscommunication by someone there." And it seemed like there was one person who ran that play wrong.
Yeah, weird. Strange.
If it's like 1-for-1, like maybe, sometimes with the running back. If it's the whole offense and the quarterback looking like a jackass, that was honestly, I think it was a great representation of the Packers. Jordan Love is Gutekunst, and everybody else is everybody else in the Packers.
And that was a play that kind of opened up my eyes to the theory that I had that Jordan Love and Devin Funchess are, kind of on the same page here. Is I believe that play ended up with Jordan Love throwing it up into double coverage to Devin Funchess.
Mm-hmm.
So if he trusts Devin Funchess enough that when everything goes wrong, that's the guy I'm looking at. I don't know what we're doing, but that seems to be the solution to Jordan Love's opening the wrong way problems.
Obviously Devontae is not going to be out there for the whole game, and but as much as I love him and as much better as he's going to be than Curtis Samuel this year, got to keep the consistency. If you're throwing it up to him on a broken play, that's not good. If Sternberger has to make a good catch to make you look good, that's not good. So,
a couple more things on the offense here. Kylan Hill, I thought looked pretty damn good in every facet. I'm not sure if he's a great fit for kick return, in all honesty, but offensively, I think he's a solid player. You can tell he has great burst after he gets the ball. I think he has a role, despite Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon both playing. I think he has a role to catch those screen passes and do some of that work for this offense. And I think, in 2 or in 3 years when they don't keep Aaron Jones around, I think it's going to be A.J. Dillon and Kylan Hill, and I think there's worse backfields. I think he's a really solid player. What do you guys think?
Yeah, he's the guy who I think I compared him to. I don't know if it was on this show, but I compared him to Christian Michael when the Packers had Christian Michael as a guy who just wants the ball and wants to run and get positive yards. That's what Kylan Hill reminds me of. I thought he looked great on that screen for a touchdown, broke a couple tackles. He's a guy that just wants to get the ball, put his head down, and get some yards, and get back to the huddle and do the same exact thing next play, no questions asked, which is awesome. And that's not great. For kick return, you're not going to put your head straight down and run into a wall of defenders. But
if you're a Packer, you might.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think for that they're just trying anyone there right now. But he's a guy who has potential. Zach, you're right. He does have screens. If I remember right in college or from his draft, he had good hands. He can catch screens. He can bring upfield. He can spell Aaron Jones when maybe we're behind and don't really have a use for AJ Dillon at that point. He's a guy that can do it. And that's what you want as draft picks, as late draft picks. Just go in there and do your job. And Kylan Hill seems like the kind of guy that is applicable to.
I think we've all been pretty high on him ever since he was drafted. He was a great 7th-round pick. I think this just drives it home. Dude should not have been a 7th-round pick. I'm not saying he should have been a 1st or a 2nd, but there's no way in hell he should have dropped to us in the 7th. I think you could already make an argument he's the best draft pick we've had this year. He looked really good. And yeah, well, I wanted to give Goot some credit just in case he's listening with the notepad and pen. But like he's good, and like you said, Aaron Jones is not going to be around here more than probably 2-3 years with his contract. We've talked about it; it's just not going to happen. So, like you said, AJ Dillon, Kylan Hill, I take that every day of the week.
And while I don't think he is a great kick returner, I think the fact that the Packers used him as the starting kick returner for the team or for that preseason game, if you're having a argument with your buddy or something like that, who's going to round out the Packers backfield, I think for me, that gives me a 100% confidence rate that he has made the team. Like I just think he has proven himself useful in a number of areas to be more useful than Patrick Taylor, more useful than Dexter Williams. And I think he's more talented, but he's a special teams contributor as well.
Do you think that, kind of sticking in the offense here, with Devin Funchess getting so much of looks with Jordan Love, he played a lot of time in that preseason game, and Kylan Hill returning kicks, do you think that means that's it for Malik Taylor?
That's who I wanted to talk about next, and it's tough because I think Funchess is wide receiver 6. I think Malik Taylor is wide receiver 7.
Yeah.
So if we keep 2 quarterbacks, I think we could keep Malik Taylor. And my only note on Malik Taylor, man, I just wrote I like Malik Taylor a lot. I think he's a good player. I think I like Juwan Winfrey more, but this is a pointless question I'm about to ask because it doesn't matter and it's nothing. It's not going to happen. Who would you rather have on your offense, Malik Taylor or Amari Rodgers? Trevor? Or Luke?
Honestly, I think you could extend that. Amari Rodgers, I mean, I don't think he's going to make the team, but EQ, I think there are a ton of guys that are above these guys that I'd rather have, Malik Taylor. Amari Rodgers, cool. He works hard. If you're really all in, that doesn't matter. If I'm going to build around somebody, it's going to be Malik Taylor. He can do a lot more. So I'd go Malik Taylor, obviously.
That's what I was going to say as well. Malik Taylor, I think he plays more roles than Amari Rodgers will. I think you put Malik Taylor anywhere as a receiver, and he's a special teams guy. Return punts. I believe he was on the kickoff team last year. I could be wrong on that, but he's versatile. The guy just does his job. He's not the guy who's gonna, if Devontae goes down, and gonna go out and get 11 touchdowns. He's a guy who just fills a role and does what he does. He's like Kylan Hill. Obviously, you want Amari Rodgers. I think you want Amari Rodgers. You draft him for a reason. He's not Randall Cobb, but it kind of feels like Randall Cobb took his spot a little bit. So I'm wondering if that's kind of a developmental thing as we're in win now mode. But Malik Taylor's a guy. He's a football guy. He knows how to play the game. He's been on the team for a couple of years now. He's got connection with Rodgers. He knows the offense. Been with Nathaniel Hackett for a couple of years now. I don't think there's a reason that you have to get rid of Malik Taylor unless you're keeping a quarterback or you sign an offensive lineman or a linebacker or something like that.
Yeah, he was one of the only receivers in the game that looked good. He had crisp routes. He found himself open a ton. Again, Texans backups. It means nothing except for the fact that other receivers couldn't get open. But he looked really good, and I think he has a role for this offense. I think he contributes to this offense. And if you say like which player can play more roles well, Amari Rogers or Malik Taylor, I think it's Malik Taylor, and I think that's because he has a whopping one role that he plays well. What
Can we talk about how funny it is when it comes to offensive line versatility? Don't care how good he is, he's versatile. When we go to wide receiver, we pick maybe the least versatile guy in the draft and maybe
I
cut
disagree.
one of the most versatile guys on the team in Malik Taylor.
I think they drafted Amari Rogers because they think he was the most versatile guy out there. That's what they were talking about because they could run, the jet sweeps with him. They could do the screens. They could do this. They could be the slot receiver. He can also play outside apparently, which no, he can't. He's a great punt returner, amazing hands, fumbled in the preseason game, and then he does all these things super well. That's why we took him. But then he plays Texans backups. He muffs a punt. There's a flag, so it came back the next time. Already has his confidence shook. He did a fair catch with over 10 yards of space. He couldn't get any separation from probably the cornerback 9 on the roster. He just looked slow and small, and that wasn't any good. And it certainly didn't help Jordan Love out because there's no throwing window because he couldn't create one. And he had one pretty decent punt return. That's because the blocking was good. He wasn't fast, but he had some good yardage. I just don't think he has a role. I don't think he does anything well, and it speaks volumes that we took this guy so he could be Randall Cobb 2.0. And then Aaron Rodgers says, "Hey, we need a slot receiver." I know you just traded up in the third round for this guy.
For him. Yeah.
Traded up in the third round for this guy who can be this versatile weapon. We need an actual slot receiver. We don't need this budget bin Randall Cobb 2.0. Let's just get Randall Cobb, who is probably making less money than Amari Rogers at this point. It just doesn't make much sense. I don't think he's a very good player. I really don't.
Remember when people were coming at me on Twitter and saying that Randall Cobb and Amari Rogers are comparable? Those are fun times, right?
Yeah. He's looking more like Ty Montgomery each day, huh? Weird.
Crazy how that works.
Crazy. I don't have anything else about the offense. I have a couple defensive notes, not many. Do you guys have any offensive stuff?
I think we hit on the big points.
Oren Burks had a loud game. I think he led in tackles. He had a big sack, and everyone talked about Oren Burks is back. And he did for sure create plays, but there's also plays where he continues to show he's just not strong enough to play in the box. Like he is a liability in run defense still, which makes me again question why we decided to move him back inside. It just doesn't make much sense. He seems like a perfect outside linebacker, of course, usually in a 4-3 scheme, but he seems like an outside guy who could probably cover a tight end pretty well, but we're not using him in that way. But he made plays, which is good to see since we haven't seen that in like 3 years. Do you guys have any thoughts on Oren Burks?
It seemed like to me, like you said, Zach, he was in a lot of plays. It seemed like he might have ran himself out of a couple plays too, just trying to be too aggressive. And I think maybe that's just because it's the first time you're hitting another team and you're all pumped up, juices are flowing. But that's the only real thing that I saw with Oren Burks. But I think you're 100% right that I was talking about with my buddies during the preseason games that Oren Burks seems like the perfect guy to take on a quick tight end or a bigger slot receiver. But for whatever reason, they're just going to run him right up the middle on blitzes the whole game.
Well, on top of that, great, he's getting home against third teamers in the first week of preseason. What happens when you get guys that can block? What happens when you get multifaceted offense and not just garbage guys and garbage time? Once he starts missing those, that's going to go down. What's not going to go down is, like Luke said, running himself out of plays, whether that stays or not, but this is not what we're going to see during the season. So once you take that away, he wasn't horrible, but again, if we're talking about him or Kamal Martin, if you're really going to use him that way, I don't know why we're not using Martin.
And it sounds like we're not even going to give Martin a chance because they're moving him to outside backer once he's healthy enough to practice again. I don't even know how he would be a good outside linebacker. It feels like we're setting him up to fail. I don't know. It's super confusing to me. I don't really get it.
Feels like Demarius Randall again.
Kind of.
It feels like Oren
D-back.
Burks is the youngest child, and Kamal Martin is the middle child. And they're just saying, set him up for failure. Don't care about the one guy, and the one guy can do no wrong in Oren Burks.
It makes there's no reason though. Skill set wise, I think it's obvious who's a better inside backer. Oren Burks is on a contract year. Well, Kamal Martin's under contract for multiple years yet. You would think you'd want to develop that guy. Goot, I would assume, should be more connected to the guy you drafted most recently. I just don't see any logic behind it unless Kamal Martin did something to really piss people off. That's the only thing I can really think of.
Maybe Joe Barry has still never met with him. We don't know. So
Joe Barry's still looking for him. Who knows? One defensive guy who played really well, actually, came out of nowhere, undrafted free agent, Jack Heflin, D-tackle out of Iowa. I think we talked about him when we were doing that super deep draft. We were going 7th round. I think we talked about him. He made some really good plays. He made a nice hustle play, chasing down somebody to make a tackle. Dare I say he looked like Dean Lowry 2.0 out there?
Don't you do that. No,
that's okay. Do that. So when I was watching the game, I was thinking this guy is like the perfect adaptation of Tyler Lancaster and Dean Lowry, the two players our co-host Trevor is not very fond of. But Heflin, I think he's a front runner right now for that guy that we talked about, that there's always that one undrafted guy who ends up making the team just on hustle alone. I thought he looked great. It's always good to see a big fat white guy chasing down guys all over the field. So I don't know. And then Heflin is a great, football last name.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like heifer,
Right.
So there are 3 things that are guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and Packers finding white defensive players from Iowa or Northwestern. It's just how it works. It just, you don't ask questions; it just happens. I was disappointed. I'm not gonna lie. For I think 2 or 3 plays, I thought it was Dean Lowry because I just saw a fat white defensive guy and said, I don't care enough to read his name. I was happily surprised when it wasn't. Then I realized it's just the next version of Dean Lowry, which is great. He looked good. I can't wait to be cursing his name eternally after he makes the team. But you look good.
I think this time next year, Trevor, you'll be saying why is this guy on the team and we need to get rid of his contract and shit like that.
Or we're gonna be watching this clip of me when he turns into like JJ Watt 2.0.
I think you might be safe there, but I think he's got hustle, and I like it.
Every white guy ever has hustle. You got to be more specific.
He's a lunch pail guy, first in, last out.
He's a gym rat.
That's right. That's what they say about every white athlete ever.
Right.
Only other defensive note here, the guy who was slaughtered, completely criticized by everybody who doesn't know how to read a defense, was Josh Jackson. I think he had some bad plays. I think he gave up something like 8 catches for a bunch of yards or something. That's what he was credited for. I would say, I was taking notes. I rewatched the game last night. 3 or 4 catches that were allowed, I would say, were his fault, and he was just beat on those. He played a lot of zone, by the way. They played a ton of zone where he started 10, 12 yards off the ball, and he was responsible for outside leverage, and linebackers were supposed to fill underneath, and Ty Summers didn't get there. Ty Summers got looked away. Other linebackers got looked away. Or it was just a hole in the defense where Joe Barry, and take notes because this is going to be a theme, Joe Barry is just hoping that the pressure gets there in time to force a quick throw, and then the quarterback doesn't find that hole in the zone. And that's what this defense is based upon. That's why this defense has failed at every turn, and it's going to be the same thing. And so you're talking about a man-to-man corner, and Josh Jackson failed playing zone, even though he followed his defensive assignments pretty much the entire game. He was unfairly criticized as called out for supporting him, I guess. But he is traded away now, so I guess who the fuck cares? But I hope he thrives with the Giants because I think I am still a Josh Jackson believer, I guess.
I just remember when we drafted him in the second round, he was a steal. I remember when I wanted to draft him in the first round, like
Same.
he was that good. And like to your point, he did play a lot of zone. So I mean, tell him to do that. Like it's like blaming the players in the NBA for giving up a lot of threes when they're playing a zone. Like that's not how it works. But we talked about this before. We talk about this all the time. Box score means everything nowadays. Nothing else really matters. So it's nice that he gets a fresh start. I feel like the Giants defense is going to be our B team pretty soon with Blake Martinez, Josh Jackson, as well as send over some other guys. But wish him all the best because he seems like a good guy. I think he still has potential. I just never think. I mean, truly, did we ever really give him a shot? I mean, he never really got on the field all that much. So.
Nope.
Yeah.
He was moved between outside and inside corner constantly. Finally became an outside corner again, where he thrived. Was touted as the best man-to-man corner in the entire draft when we selected him. And again, he played zone all of the preseason game. What do you want? Let's talk about that trade, though. So is a straight-up trade Josh Jackson for Isaac Yiadom, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Yiadom was a third-round pick in the same draft by the Broncos. He honestly just a bust. He ended up going to the Giants last year, started 10 games for them. And I'm going to say some stats that sound terrible, and then I'll say some stats that tell a better story because I'm sure people will talk about the first stats first. So of cornerbacks who played at least 50% of the snaps last year, Yiadom gave up a 126.4 passer rating, which is the fourth worst in the entire league last year. However, he gave up a 63% catch rate. He allowed 34 catches on 54 targets, 451 yards. What really killed him is that he gave up 6 touchdowns, and whatever, touchdowns or whatever. I think he's a decent player. I don't think he's better raw skills than Josh Jackson, but I think that he might be a better fit for this defense. And something that I found interesting is he played almost 17% of his snaps in the box last year. So I almost wonder there's 2 ways the Packers could try to convert this guy, especially if you're trying to get something out of him that other teams haven't got out of him yet. It'd be interesting to make him like a box safety. I think that's an interesting conversion. Or that star role, obviously, is a natural one if you're asking him to be playing in the slot, in the box, stuff like that. I don't think he's better than Chandon Sullivan. Oh, I also should say Shamar Jean-Charles. People are finding out Shamar Jean-Charles is a good player. Holy shit. Because he balled out during the preseason game. Weird. I don't think he's better than either of those 2 corners. But I think converting him to be a box safety behind Amos would be a super, super interesting move.
Yeah, Amos is the guy who doesn't seem like he's going to get hurt ever. I don't know if it's just because of how he plays, but you can never have too many guys stopping the run, especially in a defense like this where you're just, sending so much pressure. And what I like about him is he has experience playing. 10 games with the Giants last year. He's not a great player, not a terrible player, just kind of an average player. He's like I don't know. I think he's like Josh Jackson, just an average player who can play football. I don't know if he does make strides in the last couple of weeks training camp here, the last couple preseason games. But do you think that Zach, you mentioned that they're talking about moving Jair Alexander down to that slot role? Do you think he takes any of the burden off of that at all, or anything like that?
I hope. They were talking about Jair in that star role, and they haven't really talked about it much since. And obviously, we didn't get to see him in the preseason game or anything. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they got away from that a little bit. It would be nice to have a clear slot guy. a slot corner and then that slot linebacker who, again, if we're trying to convert a linebacker to that role, I would assume Oren Burks would be the perfect one for that, considering he was a DB in college. But yeah, I think Adam could do that. I think I haven't watched enough film on him to know if he could be the box safety or not. But the fact that he played in the box a lot for the Giants, I just thought was an interesting thing that nobody else is saying yet. And it could become very relevant for the Packers, especially because it's kind of unfair to be bringing somebody in essentially halfway through the preseason. He's going to play, I'm sure, a little bit this week, but people were saying Josh Jackson wasn't going to make the team. He was going to be a cut. So if this is a 1-to-1 trade, are we assuming he's going to be a cut because we drafted 2 corners and stuff like that? Why would we trade for somebody to cut him right away? That's why I think trading for him and converting him to safety would be very, innovatively thinking and something that we haven't necessarily seen from the Packers, and it could be cool. Look at me being positive.
This isn't the greatest way. It's not even a good way to evaluate all trades, but we weren't using Jackson, so what the hell is the point of keeping him? And when you're not using him, the only way a trade is going to be bad is if you could have got more for him. I don't think we could have got much more for him after the way he played, and at least the way it was covered, I should say. So I don't really see what the point is. There are even some people on Twitter. One writer in particular said, "Good riddance, Josh Jackson." Like
a lot of people.
Like, why? Like, what did, like, again, I don't understand. We're in a league full of, like, people that literally, like, one guy actually almost murdered and threatened to murder his wife. There are murderers, domestic violence. This dude always conducted himself the right way, did exactly what he's told to do. He wasn't utilized correctly, and suddenly that's his fault. Like, it seems very weird in a culture where nobody can do wrong anymore. It seems very weird that we're crucifying a guy for doing what we tell him to do. Just seems unorthodox.
Yeah. I don't know. He's always going to be compared to Jair Alexander unfairly. And that's tough because he's the best corner in the league. By the way, Jalen Ramsey today got lit up by Hunter Renfrow the entire day. So, yeah, he's
but
great.
He tweeted about it that he's the king. So film and reporters versus one Jalen Ramsey tweet. Who knows?
He could have been trying stuff out. I didn't see it, so I'll give him a pass because I'd rather stick with the player than a reporter, from what we've seen from the Packers.
That's fair.
Okay, so enough from the preseason game here. Rodgers had an interview today after practice. The only thing I'll say about it, there's some good stuff in there. He's funny. He's good. But he suggested, because someone asked him about what does he need in terms of being included in decision-making and stuff again. And he suggested that he's still not being included in the roster conversations, which I think is kind of unbelievable. And he reiterated that he doesn't need to have a say. He just wants to know that there's a conversation going on. And if, he was included so he could hear the reasoning behind it, that would be awesome. So it sounds like he's still not even being included in those, which it's pretty unbelievable. I just don't really get it. I'm not sure what we're trying to do here. And then the other move, aside from not bringing in Blake Bortles, this one really confuses me. The Packers released their second punter, and most people think that's insignificant. Why, in an 18-week season, 17 games, are we releasing our second punter who has been pushing J.K. Scott, but most of all, taking away kicks from J.K. Scott in the preseason? So now we have J.K. Scott punting every single time for 2 preseason games and adding more wear on his leg. We've talked about how he always punts with 1 foot on the ground, so it's more stress on his leg. That's why he wears down during the course of a normal season. But we just released the second punter to make room for a quarterback. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it's for sure going to mean bad things. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist.
Our special teams is already bad. It has already been bad, and now we're gonna add to that and let it compound by destroying the punter even more. Like, I'm not saying the answer was to get rid of J.K. Scott, but
Right.
like, good lord, at least understand what's going on, especially when it's something so well known as like he wears down and it's seen and it's proven. It doesn't make sense. Like, I get like the look of that, but again, you can't. I saw those idiots block or try to block. Not one of them
Mm-hmm.
could have gone. Like, that isn't improving. That isn't getting better. That's just no. I don't know. I don't know. I should stop trying to understand though.
To me, the whole two punter thing, it obviously seemed like there's a competition going on between punters. They were taking every other punt, and they got a hell of a lot of them last game. But
Yeah.
every other punt, it was the two punters. This just makes me feel that they're comfortable with J.K. Scott now for the rest of the year. Like you said, Zach, his whole punting motion brings wear and tear on both legs. He did a lot of strength on the left leg, a lot of strength on the right leg. Who knows? The Packers better be winning a lot. Like they were. How many? When was that? Last year or 2 years ago? When they only had how many? They had like the least amount of punts ever, or something like that. So,
Yeah.
and especially if they're going to keep J.K. Scott, that special teams better be a hell lot better than it was on Saturday, because that is one bad unit.
Yeah, it didn't seem like much has changed there. But like, even if this move was to provide confidence in the young punter to be like, hey, you won the job, you're the guy. Another way to do that would be to say, hey, you won the job, you're the guy. Again, communicating, that strong suit. But then also saying, hey, you don't even need to dress for the preseason game because you don't need to punt because you won the job. And then we're going to make this guy punt and ruin his leg. That's how you do it, as most people would do it. It's the equivalent of the Packers cutting Kurt Benker and be like, hey, Aaron Rodgers, you won the job. Let's go out there for the preseason. I know you don't need to show us anything, but let's loosen that arm because it's a long season. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, and it's at face value an inconsequential cutting. But you can't tell me we needed tight end 14 on the roster because we keep signing more and more tight ends and stuff. Like, this is a bad decision. Yeah, it's just football 101, man.
Look at that. 50 minutes in, the depression is kicked in. We're back, baby. We never left. Zach, you are always here right with us.
I started depressed because a bomb was dropped on me. Luke, you had a question here to send us out on, unless you guys had something else you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I got something I want to bring up real quick. I know you mentioned a hurricane 2 weeks ago and how to contain that.
Yeah.
Something else just popped up on my phone that says warnings issued by authorities after several recent coyote attacks in Arizona. So I thought that was pretty funny. But my question leading in is the 2019 draft. A lot of us, I'll put my hand up, me included, wanted a number 2 receiver. That draft class included A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and Terry McLaurin.
Mm-hmm.
If we were back in that draft, obviously they all went after our first 3 picks, which we took Gary, Savage, and Elton Jenkins, 3 pretty solid guys. But who out of those 3, we might have talked about this before, but what one would you want on the team now?
I would rather have Terry McLaurin, and he went directly one spot right after the Packers pick. The kid's a stud, and I think he fills the roles well. Obviously, DK Metcalf's interesting because he's a big-bodied guy that could kind of serve that role. But Terry McLaurin, I just feel like, is more versatile. He's capable of running a ton of routes, and if you put Devontae Adams in the slot next to Terry McLaurin on one side, they could run any combination of routes, and it's fully unstoppable.
Yeah.
I would lean McLaurin as well, just because I prefer him a little bit over AJ Brown. Although I will say, I think for the short term, I think it might have been DK Metcalf. For the short term, obviously, Devontae Adams is not most likely, he's gone after this year. If DK Metcalf is your one, that's a lot more problematic than if McLaurin is your number one. Obviously, they wouldn't have foreseen that, but for the first couple of years, I mean, DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams would have been just disgusting. But long term, like you said, Zach, McLaurin can do whatever he wants. You don't really need his big body when you have 14 tight ends. Yeah, he would have been nice, but shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I think, Trevor, you're right about that. In the short term, you want DK Metcalf in the win now mode because he's that field stretcher. Obviously, who knows if he's going to catch the ball, but what difference is that with MVS?
Who knows if he's going to drop it before the end zone, too? Right. You never know.
I'd much rather have DK Metcalf than MVS. I think he's just a bigger threat. Chicago was triple teaming Devontae Adams last year. If you have DK Metcalf on the team, that's two guys right there, and that leaves 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 with Devontae Adams. And we saw what he did when it was 1-on-3 this year. But I think out of the three, the best one in my mind is A.J. Brown, just because I think the guy's a stud. He knocks everyone off the field. He carries guys on his back into the end zone. But I don't know how well he plays with Devontae Adams. I'm in DK mode, but if I'm looking for a new number one receiver after Devontae leaves, I think you guys are right with Terry McLaurin.
It is an interesting conversation, though, because the short term versus the long term definitely does have major ramifications. Because to your point, A.J. Brown long term is damn good, too. But also short term with Devontae, that's a lot different than a McLaurin. So.
But we make decisions 2 to 3 years down the road. And next year, by the way, we're also going to make decisions 2 to 3 years down the road. We're just going to keep sliding that window each year, and that is how you be a good GM.
Trevor, how old are you?
How old what?
How old are you?
23.
I'm 23 as well, and so is DK Metcalf.
Holy shit.
You're right.
Yeah, I feel like that nerdy guy in the track picture with him.
You're right.
That you're like, what are you doing there? You don't belong there. Yeah, that's DK. And it was just so funny at the draft, too, because you see how big he is. Like, I don't give a damn if he can't run a route. At this point, when you don't need him and Devontae's the one, who cares? Like, trade him afterwards. But
he also struck out in a celebrity softball game, finished last in a race. He's just a perpetual loser from everything I've seen, I guess. I don't know.
23 making millions or 23 in Inter Milan jerseys railing on punting situations in Green Bay. It's a choice. It's I can't think of the word. I'm already lost. I already gave up. Whatever.
Okay, well, that's good. Let's end on that note. That kind of seems like the theme of this show. Did you guys want to talk about quick the upcoming game or no?
No. I'm sorry. It's the Jets. Okay, the Jets are trash. Their defense, Adam Salad's going to throw stupid shit at us. It's going to work. We're not going to block it. And our defense is somehow... It'll be decent, but I think we give Zach Wilson... make him look good somehow.
I will say Aaron Rodgers talked up that defensive line for the Jets a lot today. And I think it's certainly a tougher test for this offensive line against them than the Texans posed. So it'll be interesting to see if they step up and rise to the occasion or if it'll just be another embarrassment. And again, it speaks to our offensive line couldn't block the Texans. Why would we bring Jordan Love to play against the Jets behind our offensive line in that game? So I'm sure
because he's hurt too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, he's super, super hurt. I think the injury report said super duper hurt, if I remember right. So I'm sure he'll be in a full ice bath on the sideline, maybe having someone massage his shoulder. We don't even know what shoulder is hurt. Like that's where we're at.
It's
it could be either one because there is no injury.
It was like Mike Tyson's famous injury when he's like, "I broke my back." They're like, "What?" He's like, "Spinal." Everybody's like, "What? What? No, that's not an injury." And he just walked off, and they let him.
It's like Brett Favre when he was at the Vikings when he had injuries to his ankle, shoulder, and back all at the same time. But before the show, we talked about bringing in another quarterback, and Zach, me and you agreed that we wanted a fun quarterback. I think if Jordan Love doesn't play against the Jets with that defensive line, Kurt Benkert might be a very fun quarterback to watch. The guy doesn't even read when there's no pressure, so him spinning out of the pocket immediately is going to be fun to watch all day on Saturday.
True.
I do have another question too. If you could pick one Packer, not, don't just pick like Aaron Rodgers. One Packer that you think would fit the mold best for us on this podcast when Janet is either recruiting kids or has lost her voice. Who do you think it would be and why?
I'm partial to DJ Slayton. I love defensive linemen. Defensive linemen and offensive linemen are always the funniest. And there's no doubt he's fucking hilarious. So I would love to have him.
That's what I was going to bring up about David Bakhtiari.
Yeah, him too.
I would go Dean Lowry just because I think that would be a funny back and forth between us. Like, you guys would be talking and we'd always like be throwing barbs, and that would just be a very interesting dynamic.
I'll bring in my 2 cents and I'll say Shamar John Charles just so I can finally meet him.
I like Shamar, man. He's been. I'm happy. While it's frustrating to see people like, oh my God, I think we found a guy. It's just because we've been talking about him. I'm happy he's getting respect because I think the dude can ball. I think he's very good.
So what we're going to do is we're going to tweet at every single one of those players we just mentioned, and whoever responds, likes, or does it first has the honorary 4th spot whenever one of us cannot show up.
I've been tweeting at and DMing Shamar John Charles for a while now. So.
The worst thing too is he doesn't have that many DMs.
Right.
Like, he doesn't. He's just scrolling right by it.
I think the dude has less followers than you, Zach, and he's still not responding to me.
Yeah. Maybe I'll reach out. The other guy who we could get, Joe Fortunato, the long snapper who hasn't played in 2 decades, I believe. He was cut, so he has free time in between his grocery store shifts. I think we could probably get him on the podcast.
Cheese man.
Just got to
Dude,
get him.
how did we not get the ultimate utility weapon? I think he's going to start for Washington this year. And I'm going to get a jersey. I have to. Like, he's the guy. Dr. Cheese.
Who was the guy we had a couple years back? His last name was Beer. I want him too.
Oh, DeBeer? Yeah.
Yeah.
We can reach out to him. He's also has some free time, I think. We can figure it out.
So I just thought of another team name for Washington too. Where do you think? Obviously, it's below the Red Hawks and Red Wolves, but compared to the Presidents and all that garbage, where do you think the Washington Debt Collectors lands? I think that could
kind of like it.
That could be kind of funny, actually.
That's a good one.
Like their slogan is like, "You just like paid up, bitch," or like "Today is payday." I don't know. Or they could do like the money sign. I think that would be kind of funny.
Coming out of the tunnel, just doing the money sign. It could be interesting. It could be good. When I first, I heard someone read the list like you did first, Luke. So I didn't think it was Red Hawks. I thought it was Red Hogs. It is Hog?
That's what it said on Facebook. HOGS.
I kind of like it. I kind of like it.
I prefer Debt Collectors now, but
Debt Collectors is pretty good.
And then they could run out to like "It Ain't About the Money," that song. Ooh, that'll be good. That'll be good.
Or
I'm sold. Yo, Washington Debt Collectors. If you like it, get at us in the chat. Make them change their name.
Or bitch better have my money.
Yeah.
Look at all the options you have, Dan Snyder. All of them.
All right. The last question before we head off is: if we're changing the Packers, what's the name going to be?
Okay.
I just like the Green Bay cheese.
Cheese. I do like it. Oh man, I don't even know.
The Mountain Men, because it could kind of be a euphemism, and it would also be really funny. Because I'd love to see the jerseys behind it, and I would love to have like Goot be embarrassed as a GM of the Mountain Men. That would make me laugh.
I don't think he could even be embarrassed. Like I feel like he's so like not self-aware ever that he would be like fully up behind it.
If we would, I know kind of some baseball history I have here is that Cleveland Indians back when they had Nap LaJoy as their second baseman, just changed their name to the Cleveland Naps because he was so good. We could be the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers.
Fine with me,
No,
yeah.
we already have been. Since 2009, we've been the Aaron Rodgers. He's been pulling along a dead corpse for like 10 years of a team.
Duluth, when they had a professional football team, it was the Duluth Eskimos for 1 year, and then they sold it immediately after and changed the name to their star players Eskimos. And they toured the entire country. I think they had 29 games, played only one at home, and they just toured this guy. And he is fucking stud. He's in the Hall of Fame now. He's a stud.
Lombardi
40
sweep.
points in one game.
Wow.
Hey, Lombardi sweep. Come for the Packers, stay for Washington's football name, MLB history, and Duluth history.
Mm-hmm. He has the record for most points in a game. 6 touchdowns, 4 extra points.
And stay safe of coyote attacks.
Please, for the love of God, and put a lid on those hurricanes.
Right.
See you next week.
Have a good one, guys.